Welcome, everyone, to the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. I'm host Matt Betts. We're thrilled to be joined today by Rutgers University Associate Head Coach and Pitching Coach Mike McRae. Mike, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me, Betsy. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. So before we get too much into, college baseball in the upcoming season, can you kind of take me through your coaching career? How did you get started in coaching and realize that you wanted to be one?
Great question. And gosh, I may date myself if I share all of that, but it started, in all honesty, with an arm injury, which kind of led to the end of the playing days. And sadly to say, and in doing so, when I went through it, I kind of got involved, even with the intercounty team at the time. I sort of got into the coaching side a little bit and dabbled, and got introduced by a gentleman by the name of Larry Downs, who's a tremendous player in his own right in his day in Canada. And he kind of got me into the clinic environment. Larry is one of the first ones to ever do it in Canada, to run camps. And in all honesty, it kind of spearheaded into some other connections and some other people that I got to meet. And you started to, my love of playing the game started to kind of grow into, I really, really became infatuated and fascinated by trying to learn more about it and learn the other aspects, and probably even more challenging, finding different ways to impact other people in terms of different learning styles to help them get better in their own right. When I started young, like, this was the neat thing. Didn't really know much about, where it could go or how it could go and evolve. And, eventually I just kept pushing and knocking on doors and got some opportunities. And, I got an opportunity to cross the border pre 9/11 at McRae University. And that, I think about it now because I kind of get a lot of phone calls from Canadians that are trying. I just got one from an alum of mine that's at VCU right now, Campbell Ellis, and literally was asking me the same thing, like, hey, how do I get the paperwork done? How do I get rolling so I can stay in the country? And I jokingly told him to find himself a nice young lady that'll take him in and hand him the MR degree, because that's your best way of getting working papers. But in any event, I got lucky in the timing of it pre 9/11, where you could cross the border, and I was from a border city that allowed me to go do that and do some work on a volunteer basis and kind of grow and get opportunities to have led to where I am today. So
anyone that follows college baseball, volunteer assistants, or play college baseball, volunteer assistants are commonplace across the game. What does that role entail? When you hear volunteer, you think working for free, but take us through that specific role.
Sure. So initially, I would say that's exactly what they were. You were doing whatever you can to get your foot into the door of a program and to work for somebody who is ready and willing to, in exchange for your hard work and labor, push you on to someone else that's eventually looking to bring a coach on. And baseball truly, it's really hard to just, with minimal experience, jump into kind of a staff. And so in those days, there'd be people with pretty good experience that truly were volunteers. It's grown, it's evolved, where, not only have we expanded the paid assistant pool at the NCAA level, but you're seeing some of the bigger programs, and certainly at the Power 5 level, where they're adding positions that really didn't exist before. They're calling them player development, they're calling pitching strategies, they're calling even video coordinators that have allowed you to get, into the room. You're seeing what used to be the volunteer positions, what people have done with them is they become the camp director, and they get funded that way. And, but at the same time, they're allowed to coach and get involved in a staff and hopefully move their way kind of up the ladder into full-time positions.
The thing that I love about college baseball and coaches in particular is the various coaching styles. I feel like you get a wide range of, laid back, high strung. You kind of see them all. Well, how would you describe your personal coaching style? What can someone expect when they have Mike McRae as a pitching coach or a head coach?
Yeah, I think it's a little different I've been a pitching coach now for, in the last 8 years, 4 of them I've spent strictly as a pitching guy. Right. And I think it's a little different. I don't have to be bad cop when I'm in this role, which is fun. When a young man's in trouble, the discipline isn't necessarily my, I don't handle that aspect. I just get to go run down to the bullpen and teach a kid how to throw a cutter. Right. So, to be honest, I enjoy that part of it. nobody likes to handle discipline. It's not fun. It's necessary. I think good leadership must have, a form of discipline that can be effective in terms of the goals of the individual and the program. And I would say if you played for me, it would come in the form of tough love. I'm gonna be hard on you, but at the end of the day, it's only because I care. And I want to see them grow as not only players, but as people. A lot of my alums that I'm in touch with tell me I'm soft nowadays, but you know what I do? I look at a lot of things like if it was my son or daughter, and as long as they were being treated this way, would I be okay with it? And that's how I've handled over my career a lot of discipline, especially once I became a parent, and still do that to this day.
So you made multiple stops on your college coaching career. Name a few. Head coach at Canisius. You're at VCU, William and Mary most recently before coming to Rutgers. Is there anything over that kind of span? I guess that would be probably the last 20 years or so that kind of sticks with you that's really helped you get to the next level as a coach?
Yeah, like a gazillion things, in all honesty. Like I've worked for some tremendous coaches. I've worked with some unbelievable people. I've been at places that I would say aren't necessarily the most supportive of what our team's goals were. You learn from that just as well, right? Like everything to me is a learning experience. I spend a lot of time in a week trying to learn more and learn different things and kind of grow my arsenal, I guess, as a coach in order to help serve these guys better. If you want me to, I'll share one unique thing. Probably about it was in my last couple of years at Canisius, 2015. I had started instituting I would call it a pitching system. I called it the 3-man crew. Did it part-time in 15 and utilized it to help us win a conference championship. And when I got to VCU as the pitching coach, the head guy there, Sean Stifler, who's now at Notre Dame, again, a terrific leader. Like he asked me right from the get-go, do you think we could do that here? And he had similar feelings about that I did, that like I didn't care what day of the week it was. I was wired to win. I wasn't going to give up a Tuesday just to use let a prospect get some innings. Like for me, it was still another opportunity to win. And in those days, like at that program, like Tuesdays were against ranked teams. It's East Carolina, it's North Carolina, it's Duke, it's Virginia, and the list goes on and on. And so sometimes those games were harder than certainly playing A10 competition. But so he let me kind of roll with this system. And since that time, like I've now run it 8 years consecutively, and strictly utilizing it. The benefits and positive effects of it have grown tremendously. I've had the ability to go speak on it nationally now, where people asked. I've been consulted by some MLB organizations about it. I get random calls and emails every week. Can you talk me through this? How do you do this? What's it look like? What's the format? What's the pros and cons? And it's kind of been a neat thing, because you start now hearing about people talking about it in other areas without knowing who I am. And then, my son is actually working for the University of Texas baseball now, and that's a whole level discussion and story. But I guess in their staff meeting about 2 weeks ago, it came up, and where the head guy was asking about it, kind of a system, and Mason stepped up and said, well, I know a guy that utilized it full time. And of course, the pitching coach who, Mason works really closely for, basically said, oh, would that guy happen to be your father? And yeah, so it's just kind of neat to see some of this come full circle. But that part, that kind of systematic approach to pitching, which has been really different, and it's been neat. It's been fun. And I certainly think it's helped propel my career a little bit. Yeah.
How has pitching development in college changed since you kind of started? Because obviously analytics are a huge thing, technology is a huge thing. Those are probably, I'm guessing, those are two large changes. But kind of, what have you noticed over the course of your coaching career?
Yeah, what I didn't know when I left Canisius and went to VCU to be a pitching guy, and everybody says, you're not going to be an assistant, you can't do that, blah, blah. Like, one of the things that allowed me to do personally was I didn't have to spread myself so thin. Because I was the pitching guy at Canisius, but I was also the head coach. And I realized how unfair that was to all those pitchers on that staff to try and wear both hats, right? It was also a function of like I didn't have a full-time assistant until my last year there. So like, some of it was you didn't have a choice, right? You just worked harder. Like you put in more hours and tried to do more. But when I got to VCU, I really got to, be very, very specific and specialize in that area. And I would say my knowledge grew because that's where I was spending all of my time. And probably the biggest thing that, I got thrust into my lap was because we played at a pro field, we had TrackMan. And that was at a time when TrackMan was not necessarily like it is today, where every stadium in the country had it. Like back then, the SEC schools had it, and if you played in a pro field, but that was it, right? So the fact that I got to utilize it every single day, without question, has advanced my hopefully abilities in this profession, and certainly has allowed me to kind of relate to players. It's a whole nother way to expedite development. It's not the be end all. Like again, at the end of the day, you don't want guys getting paralyzed by it, but whoa, is it really allowed us to make some decisions and move a lot faster? And I love it, to be honest with you. I really, really do, because we can speak to some definitive facts now, and we can, quantify things in a much better way to help develop young players. And like the reality is the game has gotten better. Like we can talk about, all the problems in college baseball, but the level of play is unbelievable now. Like the velocities, the stuff guys are throwing right now that in the last 10 years, I would tell you has grown exponentially. Guys, like 10 years ago, you had a 90-mile-an-hour guy on your staff. You were like, whoa, nowadays, like everybody on the staff there was 90 or they don't pitch, right? Like it's just the growth has been unbelievable. And sure, some of that is COVID. You got guys sticking around longer. You got the shrinking of rounds in the draft, right? There's a lot of mitigating factors going into it, but boy, it certainly has gotten better, and the level of play has grown tremendously.
Time now for a mound visit, courtesy of the Baseball Zone. Today, Coach Sean Schaefer explains what he would tell a young baseball player who's looking to turn pro one day.
They need to get into the weight room and work as hard as possible in the weight room. One of the best things that I ever heard when I was playing is, what do you do when nobody's watching? It's not always about, when you jump on a field, you're in a championship game, it's easy to perform. But the best players are working their hardest when no one else is around. So, when you're spending your extra time either taking your swings or doing your mobility work, or, getting in the weight room for an extra day when other guys are sitting on the couch or playing video games, right? So how much time and effort are you willing to put in over top of what, the average player's willing to do?
This has been a mound visit courtesy of the Baseball Zone. Now back to the action.
I do want to talk a little bit about the state of college baseball and college athletics, but I want to hold off on that for a little bit.
Sure.
Going back to kind of the analytics and the technology and all the information, obviously college is very beneficial. Is there a point where, players, it's a little too young to introduce them to that, where you think it's too much for development and they should be focusing on other things, like high school levels, for instance?
Yeah, no, I actually think there'd be value. Like, listen, it'll change. Things will change, especially as guys grow and as they get stronger and as they become more efficient movers. All of those things can influence the analytic piece, right? But here's where I would say, like, there's value even at some of the younger ages. Like, I'll have a high school kid come to a camp here and he's throwing two different fastballs. And when you get him on TrackMan, you look at him, I've said to guys, I wouldn't use this one fastball. It's not really a good pitch. So what happens is you can very quickly help them, manage their training economy so that they're spending more time trying to improve something that can provide positive results immediately. And when it comes to that, I think there is value, right? Like, you see a lot of guys in high school throw a curveball and a slider, and it really isn't. They're both way below average. Whereas you can spend more time trying to make one a much better pitch, which would make that young man more attractive to a college scout. If they did that. So yeah, I do think there's value. Again, where are you going to spend and invest all your time and energy? Like, Should the high school player invest all of it in that? Probably not. Like, they probably need to get on a better throwing routine and get in the weight room more. Like, there's obviously tremendous value in all that, but I do think there is some, the analytical piece can only enhance their development.
Yeah, it's funny you say that there's now kind of hard data to justify certain decisions. I remember when I was playing, if I was told if you throw a curveball and a slider, one of them probably sucks. That was the advice that I got. So in my case, both of them did. But anyways, this isn't about me. So let's jump to your time at Rutgers. Obviously, you've been on the job 7 or 8 months now, I think. How's it
Yeah.
going? And take me through that decision. What made it the right decision to make the move to be the
Yeah. So the decision, a lot of people didn't realize this. The decision to leave the former place had been decided at the home front last December at Christmas time when the three of us were all together in the same house. And my son had just taken a job at the Red Sox. And I told him, listen, you have to go on their health plan. My daughter was transitioning where I knew in that year she was going to be off of mine. And I said, listen, Madison, you need to get on board when that window opens up in the summer, because I'm not going back to William & Mary. So at the time, I didn't know what the future is going to hold. I really wasn't caught up in it. I just know that it was not for me. The irony is the day after our season ended and I, it was kind of a multiple day at the tournament. Listen, I thought we had a great run at William & Mary, like 3 consecutive winning years, made the tournament every year. We had the greatest draft in school history the past year. We had 3 guys go in the top 10 round. And love the players there, right? Unbelievable experience with those guys. So the day after it was over, I said to my daughter, I said, Dad, like, since I've been born, you've never been off in the month of June. I go, I know. I'm going to the beach and I'm going to go see some concerts. Let's line them up, right? And literally the next day, Coach Steve Owens here at Rutgers called me and said, hey, like, I heard you're not, you're going to be looking for a job soon. And I'm like, yeah, who told you? I don't want to tell you. Like, would you be interested in our position? Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to talk to you about it, learn more and figure out if it's a good fit for both of us. And, I'd competed against him for years. I wouldn't have called him a friend. I would have called him a colleague, certainly as a guy that I would see on the road and play against, and had the utmost respect for the success in his, years all over the Northeast. He goes, well, can I fly you up here in the next couple of days? And I'm like, nope. He goes, what? I go, I'm going to play hockey tomorrow morning, and then I'm driving straight to the beach. I go, I'll be gone to. He goes, are you serious? I'm like, yep. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And
that's a guy that's been around college baseball to tell the head coach at Rutgers that I'm going to play hockey.
And I did. And literally, I was like, I came back from there on the Sunday and he flew me up. And, I went up to Rutgers and he offered me the position at the time. And for years, I kind of fought. I had turned down some Power 5 opportunities. One, I wanted to honor my commitment to William & Mary. And 2, I really hadn't thought much about it. But, the way the game's evolving, I'm really, really excited about. When I saw kind of the resources that are available, the daily living that the players here get, like, wow, it's better than minor league baseball, with all of the resources that are at their disposal and the care and the treatment that they get. It's awesome. It's awesome. And that part of it's been, that's been a vast, vast difference from what I've ever been used to be, in all fairness.
I was going to say, take us through that a little bit, because when we were talking to Rob McCoy, he mentioned the difference between Niagara and William & Mary. And now you go from William & Mary to Rutgers. What are some of those differences as far as both player development and just the way, they may be treated? And this isn't to talk down on any program.
Yeah.
The kind of levels within Division I baseball.
So, like, I'll give you a simple example. Like, we went on a fall road trip. That's something that I could not afford previously. This fall road trip that we went on here, we took every single player. We took all 40. Didn't matter if they're hurt. We took everybody, because part of it was to be a team bonding experience. We took 2 buses. We left on a Friday. We practiced on the Friday. We played the ridiculous fall games, which are 20-something innings on the Saturday. We spent the night in DC and spent Sunday sightseeing. Like, simple math for a trip of that nature with 40 players plus managers, the entire coaching staff. Like, it's a pretty significant price tag for a fall game, which does not count in your season, right? Now, it's a building block in terms of team and program development and the establishment of culture within, but like that comes with a price tag, and it really didn't matter. You know what I mean? And there's things that I wanted to bring in to utilize for the pitchers that, one of which was a program that I've wanted to use for years that I could never afford, that I introduced it, the first week on the job. I was like, listen, this is something that I want to do. Here's the value in it. I know the guy that runs the company. I've spent a lot of time researching it. I believe it's got tremendous value for it. It was like, yep, go ahead, go buy it. There's just things of that nature. It's you're not trying to pinch pennies. You're not trying to raise money. Like, all of that is done for you. The food, like, it seems simple, but like, we all know how important nutrition is, but we like the meals that our guys are fed here it's incredible, in terms of quantity, in terms of snacks, in terms of like there's 3 shelves in the locker room of healthy, nutritious snacks for guys to grab every day. There's a training table that they can go to throughout the day if they're in between classes and they need they need a protein smoothie, or they need a sandwich that they can grab. It's done at a different level.
It's all the little things that kind of push the program over the top, right? And the players, I think, really appreciate especially when you get to that level. So let's jump a little bit. Let's go back to the fall here, especially from a pitching perspective. What does a fall look like under you? What does the development look like, and how does it kind of play out?
Yeah. So the neat thing, one way or the other, depends how you look at it, is the staff here is very, very new. So at least from my perspective, I didn't have to try and sell as much as you might when you take over an established staff that's been, highly successful. And that doesn't mean that they weren't successful. It just means that there were so many new faces. I believe there's only 2 returning guys that pitched innings last year. Now, there's a couple of other guys that had been hurt either the last year of high school or hurt last year, so they did not pitch at all during the season, things of that nature. So there are other returners, but there was only 2 returners that had logged significant innings. Everyone else was new.
You had your work cut out for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was new for all of us, right? And what does the fall look like for me? It starts with honestly trying to build habits. I'm trying to get to know them. They're trying to get to know me. Put some things in place that I value, that I want them to kind of grasp ownership of and use as kind of major keys in their own personal development. Need to make them realize that you care, and care about not just them as people, but them as players and the growth, and that, like, pitcher number 18 is no different than pitcher number 1 when it comes to those factors. You're just trying to help them understand that and get them grow. And then probably the biggest thing for me is I try to get them on what I would call a recovery cycle, because recovery is really, really important to me, and the health of these guys is really, really important. So we got to try and get them on certain cycles to make them understand. And they're all different, right? Like, they all move differently. They all function differently. What one guy can do, another one can't. But so that we can eventually get them all moving towards the same common goal. And that's, to be able to pitch as many innings as possible and get as many outs and put up as many zeros as possible to help this program be successful.
So you have 2 Canadians on your roster, one of which I'll talk about first, about Ty Doucette, an infielder. Tell us a little bit about his game and what you kind of expect for him heading into the season.
Yeah, I'd heard a lot of great things about him, in the summer after I came on board, and certainly those held true. He is a pretty polished hitter. There's a ton of attention on him. I'd be absolutely shocked if he doesn't become a pretty good draft pick this year. Just really, really calm. He's not an over the top vocal leader or anything of that. He's just very, very calm. He puts together professional bats day in and day out. And I know the guys look up to him as a very good baseball player. And, even in the infield, he does a really good job of just kind of steadying things and calming things. And he knows where to go and when to be there and how to do it. And helps some of those other quarterbacks, some of those other guys that are new, how to handle that as well. So yeah, he's a terrific player.
And the other one is freshman pitcher Cameron Johnson. So tell me a little bit about him and how he's progressed in his first college season.
Yeah,
First college ball, I should say.
Cam's interesting because he, and I think this was COVID related. He ended up going to Florida to play and train kind of afterwards, and so he wasn't, I don't think, overly well known across the baseball Canada landscape because of that. But listen, he had a really, really good fall for a freshman. He probably was the most consistent freshman arm. He's had a little bit of illness go on in the month of December that's kind of delayed his ramp up a little bit. But I think we get high hopes for him. He certainly didn't get rattled. Most freshmen you'll see really, really up and down, until they get settled. Cam was the one guy that, if he gave up a run, he never let it become three. He make a great pitch, the best pitch is an arsenal, and the guy kind of just, goes off the end and gets an oopsie swing and a bloops in. Like, he didn't get rattled. He just go get your ground ball double play in the next pitch. And he did a really good job of that. He attacked the zone. Just looked very, very poised for a freshman.
Do you think that's something you can teach, or is that something that just comes with experience? And some guys just have it and some guys don't, as far as that poise and kind of mound presence.
I don't know if I would use the word teach so much as I think you can create awareness, make them aware of it. There's a lot of ways to do that. And then I think with awareness, they can grow in that capacity, for sure. Do I think that there's a maturity piece of it? Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the few things I'll guarantee a young man in college baseball is they're going to face adversity. It's going to happen when they make this jump. And that's not what's important. What's important is how they handle it, how they respond to that, how they come back from that. And, the better ones, they get over that a little bit quicker and they learn from it, obviously, and then they continue to grow.
How much do you look for that in a young player? For high school players that are listening, explain just how important that is about keeping your composure and being able to show that you can do that to a college coach.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will tell you, it's really hard to evaluate prior because most of those guys have never had adversity in high school, right? Most of them, they go on the showcase circuit and they're scheduled to throw their 2-3 innings and they breeze through it and boom, they go on to the next event the next week and in the next facility. So I think it's really hard to see and evaluate. Even in the travel ball venues up there, like there's not very many that the outcome matters. Like unfortunately, that's the reality of it. We've become so showcase, oriented that those types of games don't happen anymore. So I like that. The bigger challenge is to evaluate. Now you see it on the negative side, right? Like you see it when a guy kind of blows his cool and loses on an umpire or shows up a teammate for making an error or throws his glove when he comes off the field. And that's fine. You can see the negative impact of that. But what you don't see is the guy that, you almost need them to have a bubble over their head to share their thoughts when, the guy behind him makes an error, but you don't see anything change facially or, things of that nature. But it's a really hard thing to evaluate in a young man. You need to have some trust and faith in the people around him so that when you ask those questions, not only pertaining to that, but also like, what are they like off the field and what's their work ethic like? Like I see him on game day, but what's he like Monday to Friday when he's got to do all his preparation, when he's got to get in the weight room, when he's got to do his arm care, when he's got to do other things to help him get better and to protect himself? Is he just as diligent? That's where you really need to have some trust in the guys around a young man that you're evaluating.
How much recruiting are you doing there? Are you involved in that?
Yes, heavily every day.
Yeah.
Recruiting never ends. It just kind of morphs into different classes. Like I think about, there are times in the summer where you are talking to 2 different high school classes and you're talking to a 22-year-old, 23-year-old graduate who's got a year of eligibility left. Like that's a different conversation with the 16-year-old. So then an hour later, you're talking to a 22-year-old, right, who's been through it. It's yeah.
Yeah, my question is how has that changed over the years as far as obviously COVID kind of I don't want to say mess things up, but changed things as far as eligibility. There's the JUCO news. How has recruiting changed since you started?
Yeah, I would say it's changed in two ways. First and foremost, the portal. The portal has created a form of free agency that, in all honesty, is absurd. Like it is. I don't think anybody originally signed up for this. You know what I mean? Like I don't think anybody signed up for it. And everyone, again, you better adapt or die in the game right now, because it's here and it's here to stay, unfortunately. And I just think about like guys that I've had in my programs over the years that I've gone to their weddings, that they showed up and they didn't play as a freshman, and it's like, get better. Yes, coach. Like, and you just went back to work the next year and, they usually got better, right? Now those guys run, it's both. Like there are schools getting rid of those guys as well. It's not one-sided by any means, but that has really, really changed the landscape of the game. And the other aspect of it, social media. Like I don't think that there are secrets anymore like there used to be. Like there used to be guys I think about the days that I've gone and watched a young man, and I used to have a colleague in my same league call me and say, "Hey, where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm at a field." He goes, "Look left and look right and tell me how many other college coaches you see." I go, "I don't have to look. I can tell you there's nobody else at this field." He goes, "Well, that's wrong. I'm sitting down here at Diamond Nation. There's 40 colleges here, and you're at some place and there's nobody around." And I'm like, "Yep." You know what I mean? Like that doesn't happen anymore. Like, social media's put everybody in front of every college in the country. I don't think, some players may just blossom later and they may be a late bloomer and therefore their attention may come at a different time. But I think I just don't know if there's any secrets anymore.
Do you think jumping from the high school to the Division I level is just going to become increasingly difficult going forward?
That's a great question. I don't know if it'll become difficult. Where I think the landscape is different is I don't think there's enough young men that are, realistic about those decisions, and not in terms of their ability to do it, but in terms of how quickly their ability will allow them to do it. Like, I think there are a lot of players, and obviously we're talking about the Canadian market right now, that think they're going to go step on the campus next year and just start and hitting the 4-hole and be an everyday guy. And if that's their goal, they probably, as a freshman, probably should rethink their Twitter decisions and their Twitter, being blessed and humbled to announce their commitments. But, now if they want to go do that at a mid-major or a lower level, that's different. And then or if they want to do that as a sophomore or a junior at the Power 5 level, that's different, right? Like, again, I'm generalizing. Like, there are some freshmen that are going to go do that, but the percentage of those that are successful, if that is the expectation, I just don't think it's realistic, if that makes sense. Because I don't think they don't realize how good the level of baseball that they're entering is, and how an average mid-major Division I player who's played every day for 3 years, and you're going to compete against him when he transfers to the school you're at, like it's just different. It's different.
What's your message to players and players, coaches, parents in the high school level about finding the right fit? Because there is a lot of, I don't want to say players thinking that they're better than they are, can play where certain places that they maybe can't. But what do you, as a college coach and as someone that's been through this process at all kinds of different levels, what's kind of your message to players?
Yeah, I think the message starts with a lot of questions. Like, I ask that a lot. Like, everybody throws out the great buzzwords, the right fit. And I'm like, oh yeah, what's that look like? Can you define that? And then you hear the stump. I want
to go to LSU. I want to go to Rutgers. I want to go to Vanderbilt. I want to go to
stumbling words, right? And like, listen, I can't. I'm not going to predict it. We recruit juniors, right? Like, I'm not going to predict where he's going to get to 2 years by the time he shows up at campus, because that's like often the time frame, right? Like a lot of things happen. A lot of things happen within our program, and a lot of things happen to that young man in terms of a growth and development, right? So I don't want to say, no, you're not going to do it. But what happens if you're not? Like, what happens if you're going to go there and you're only going to get 50 at bats as a freshman? Is that going to be enough for you? Are you then willing to go into the office and say, hey, I get it now. I got to work harder so that my goal of being the starting shortstop can still be accomplished, but it may be accomplished as a sophomore instead of as a freshman.
Do you think the transfer portal's made it too easy to just go somewhere else or find a different fit if they don't find that immediate success?
Without question. Without question. It has made it way too easy. Yes. Yes.
Is there anything that you would change about the current state of not just the NCAA in general, NCAA baseball? Some tweaks you would like to see to kind of level this out, so to speak?
Yeah, again, I'm not a fan of the portal. There's a huge timing issue in our sport that I think needs to get somehow resolved. Like, and what I mean by that is we had a high school kid drafted this past summer. Now that they moved the draft later, like that type of player coming into our program can make an immediate impact. We can't replace him, right? Like we can't replace him August 1st when school starts in 4 weeks.
Yeah, when they get drafted a month before, I guess that just kind of takes them off your table. And
yeah, I don't know how to solve it. I know that the professional people don't like the draft where it is too, because in order to add one of the recent picks to a roster, they've got to drop somebody because they've got roster limits as well in minor league baseball. So they're not. So instead, they send the college guy off to Instructs. Right. He just gets drafted. He doesn't even get to play pro baseball that year with an affiliate. So I know they're not necessarily in love with it either. And I don't have the solution. I don't like complaining about problems that I can't offer a solution to, but that certainly is an issue that we need to fix. I hope that the roster issue that has been, I hope that is getting resolved. Like there's been a lot of battles moving towards that. And here's what I mean. There was a lot of programs that were bringing 60, 70 kids in the fall and literally cutting 30 people at Christmas. To me, that's tragic because there is no high profile high school commit that thinks that's going to happen to them, but it does. And that's awful. Like that is not what you signed up for, right? You show up as a freshman, 3 months later, you're looking for a new home. The NCAA is trying to fix that with what's moving. And it sounds like only a couple of weeks ago, we got a little bit better resolution and a little clearer picture of what it's going to look like. And I hope that holds true because that bothered me. That bothered me a lot, because there's a lot of really good players that programs were stockpiling that had just pure math alone, had no chance to get on the field that could have gone to places and had positive fits where they could have gotten onto the field right away. They could have made an impact. They could have walked away with a great degree and maybe a professional career out of, but instead they're, at a very delicate age, they're getting, hamstringed by, thinking that's not going to happen to them.
Yeah. I think that impacts not just their baseball career, but their life in general, right? They enroll at a school, they go somewhere thinking that they're going to be there and then they're not. Obviously that can be a huge problem. And it would make the whole landscape of college baseball better if these kids went somewhere that they could contribute.
Yes.
So I'm going to go a little off topic here. When we were talking to Rob McCoy, he mentioned that you took him fishing one time. And he mentioned something about a weedless rig. Can you explain what that is? He was trying to explain it to us, and I had no idea what he was talking about. Am I even saying that right?
I guess I'm as recreational a fisherman as it gets, but like you literally just buried the hook so that the hook wasn't exposed, grabbing all the weeds.
He said you were the better fisherman. He said you taught him some things. So
and in the Niagara River, like when you weren't getting little baby minnows. When you got them, you got good ones. So they didn't worry if the hook was buried. They inhaled that thing anyway. So
good to know. So he said he taught you some things. So I wasn't sure how vast your fishing knowledge was. So
honestly, I could have sat on the back of the boat with the music playing in the middle of the day, and it didn't matter if I caught anything or not. I was in my glory. So
Yeah, for sure. So last question, I guess expectations for this season. We're now 30 something days away. By the time this airs, we'll be probably 20 something days away. What are you expecting from this Rutgers group in 2025?
yeah, I think I've done this too long to really set expectations. Internally, you always just expect them to perform, you know. Those that know me know that I am extremely, extremely competitive in everything. And you know, I have not been around a losing team program in a long, long time. It doesn't sit well with me. So obviously, you know, I just trying to move forward and trying to get these guys better every day to put them in the best possible position to be successful. And, you know, obviously I've got kind of my own, you know, piece of the pie here that I've got to make sure that they're contributing to team success. And one thing I learned, you know, I had a long conversation with Coach Stifler years ago about how he was such a pitching and defense oriented guy. And I said to him, listen, you can't always win that way. It's a great formula. I love it, especially as the pitching guy. But at the end of the day, you don't care what the equation is. You want to be able to win the 2-1 games. You also want to win the 10-9 games. As long as you're on the right end of that, that's all that really matters. And it's funny because we talked about making some adjustments internally in order to allow that. And I thought it'd create a little bit more balance to the team after that. And obviously went on to win a couple conference titles and some regionals. But yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's what we got to try and do is be on the right side of those equations. And, you know, for my piece of it is just trying to put guys in and help them get better so they can do that.
Kind of sounds like you're talking to Toronto Blue Jays fans right now, being able to win the 10-9 game, but that's another conversation for another time. Mike, we really appreciate it. Rutgers is definitely going to be a program to keep an eye on for Canadian baseball fans, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Betsy. Appreciate it.
I just love getting a behind the scenes look at all these different college baseball programs across the country and how they operate.
It's funny you talk about they're in a baseball context, Matt, but you can relate these to work contexts. And I'm sure those out there who have gone from workplace to workplace and seen how things happen differently as it pertains to, you know, maybe some things you do have to do or don't, you're kind of hearing similar things from these coaches, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of some of the misconceptions that I'll say, or kind of not understanding what it takes to play at that level and what some players are getting themselves into and expectations and just generally what it takes. I thought was really interesting from a high school player perspective. I'm not saying, and he didn't say that, you know, guys can't make that jump out of high school, but kind of knowing what you're getting yourself into is very important as you go through the recruiting process.
And we've heard now 3 different perspectives on the transfer portal. And, you know, we're able to get kind of very different opinions on it, which is great, right? And you can kind of hear different arguments for and against from a player perspective, from a coach perspective. You know, Mike made some really good points there about, you know, after a player's freshman year, how about get better? I love that. And I think that he hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, it seems like for one reason or another, staying at a school for 4 years, you know, is becoming less and less common for various reasons. Like Rob mentioned, there's a lot of different reasons people enter the transfer portal. Mike McRae doesn't like it. Rob McCoy doesn't mind it. Joey Hawkins was kind of in the middle about it. So just like you said, it's just so interesting to get perspectives on all things within these programs.
And just, you know, the amount of work these guys put in, you know, that's been one consistent through all these episodes so far, Matt, is like the dedication and the grind it takes. You know, these guys love baseball and they love seeing people get better. And it's just been a real treat to talk to them and be able to pick their brains.
Yeah, they've really given us a behind the scenes look of all the workings within college baseball. And I think it's going to be really beneficial for players, coaches, and parents when they think about sending their kids off to college. Another great episode with Mike McRae. We really thank him for his time. We have another college coaches show with Niagara University's Matt Spadafora. We're really looking forward to that one. Until then, take care.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out Canadian Baseball Network for extensive and comprehensive coverage of the latest in Canadian baseball. And The Baseball Zone, Canada's leading instructional baseball academy and training home to thousands of MLB pro, college, and youth baseball players.